Not one, but two playoff games on the NBA slate tonight. We have questions about them. These two have answers, hopefully. DraftKings contributor Julian Edlow, RotoWire's Nick Whalen. Chase or fade the following for me, please, gentlemen. Nets are up 2-0 on Milwaukee, and they're doing it without James Harden in the lineup. Kevin Durant is absolutely balling out, back-to-back 50-plus DK fantasy point performances. Chase or fade for me, Jules, that KD at 10-6 is a must play on tonight's slate.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason he's not a must play is if you want to be a little bit contrarian on a shorter slate. Obviously, everybody's ownership is going to be up on these short playoff slates, so there's not that much you can do. But yeah, I'm in on KD. I think we've seen enough. I think that the Bucks, what the Nets are forcing the Bucks into defensively is really working in favor of the Nets. Giannis was supposed to be the piece, in terms of length that can stop a guy like Kevin Durant, and it's not happening. KD is taking it right to Giannis, and when they get switches, all due respect to, a guy like Drew Holiday, who is very well respected by other NBA players as a lockdown perimeter defender. This is why Kevin Durant's so good. He can just go right over the top when he's in the post. He's the mid-range king in the current, layups and threes only NBA, and it's working. So yeah, I like Durant to score a bunch of points and continue rebounding the ball in this game.
Nick, is he a must play, or are you going the Carl contrarian route?
He's not a must play because you do have Giannis at $1,100 and $100. I don't know how to say that. $11,100. Wow.
Yes, nailed it.
There's a. I knew that did not sound right when I said it the first time. But the thing with Giannis is, even though it feels like he hasn't played all that well, his floor is so high just because of what he offers defensively. He still hands out a ton of assists. He grabs a ton of rebounds. Obviously, Durant has the higher scoring ceiling right now, but I don't think Giannis is a bad play, even if you're a little bit down on him after how game 2 went. But man, you said it at the top, Emerson. It cannot be overstated that the Nets are doing this without a 7-time All-NBA guard in James Harden. And Kevin Durant is making it look easy. It's not like it's taking 45 minutes of Kevin Durant playing his best basketball to vanquish the Milwaukee Bucks. Like, he's doing this with ease. He's getting Giannis in switches and he's shooting right over him. He's getting Drew Holiday in switches. He's backing him down. He's creating space in the mid-range, and he's just splashing everything. The Bucks have nobody who can guard Kevin Durant right now. 12 of 18 from the field in game 2. That's absolutely preposterous. Like, nothing that he's doing looks difficult. And obviously you would expect Milwaukee to have some sort of adjustments in game 3, but everybody says the word adjustments. I don't know what those adjustments are. It's not like they have some secret weapon that didn't play in games 1 and 2, who's all of a sudden going to come in and stop Kevin Durant. I think the Bucks can play better, but I don't know that there's a whole lot they can do defensively against KD.
Well, Nick, we'll see what adjustments maybe the Clippers will make tonight, because the Jazz right now are up 1-0 in this series. And Mike Conley, he missed game 1 with a hamstring injury. So Joe Ingles filled in for him in the starting lineup and posted north of 22 DK fantasy points at a 4.9 salary. Tonight, he's even cheaper, $200 cheaper, 4.7. So chase or fade if Conley sits. Ingles is your favorite value play.
He's up there. It feels like they're baiting us into playing Ingles again after that rough game 1. He really did not shoot the ball well. Obviously, despite some really good looks from 3, just 1 of 8 from 3 in that game. And this is part of a longer slump for Joe Ingles. He's 2 of his last 18 from beyond the arc over the last 4 games, dating back to that Memphis series. So a little bit of a concern, but he's also a guy that has been prone to slumps and prone to streaks throughout his career. And you think he's going to have a pretty good chance to break out of it. I mean, Joe Ingles is not someone who's going to break you down one-on-one and, is attempting these crazy step backs. Like, pretty much every look he's getting is wide open. And I don't think he's going to continue to miss those for too much longer. So if there's no Mike Conley tonight and we see elevated usage, elevated minutes for Joe Ingles, I think he's a perfectly acceptable play at that number.
Jules, you feel like you're being baited here to take Jingles?
I'm not being baited into any Jingles, I don't think. He's a fine play. The 1 of 8 from downtown and the even longer shooting slump that Nick touched on, you would assume that's gonna change at some point. But I also think the Clippers are going to make some shots in this game. Paul George missed a lot of shots. Marcus Morris, who is cheaper than Joe Ingles, literally built a brick house in game 1. I don't know why he kept shooting so many shots, but he did. And that's the type of player he is, so he's going to do it again. So I think Morris is a good value to expect a bounce back from. And, we're talking about no James Harden. That Nets backcourt continues to produce. Mike James is a nice value. Bruce Brown is a nice value. So I don't think Ingles is like the only guy in that price range that you have to slot in, and we're just scraping around for value on this slate.
Jules, this is when you really shine when we head over to the sports book. And despite being down 0-2 to Brooklyn, Milwaukee is actually favored in game 3. So by 3.5 here, a chaser fade, the Bucks win this game and cover.
If the Bucks get one, this has to be the one, but I'm going to fade it. The sharp side of this game should be, Milwaukee's role players come around at home as you're supposed to in the playoffs. Brooklyn's role players finally take a step back and regress some on the road here in a tough atmosphere. But I'm going to stick with, the take about the star power in this game. And Durant has been the star of this series. It just feels to me, we talk about Harden being off the floor and people just kind of keep betting the Bucks. Like game 1 was supposed to be the Bucks game. Like they were well rested. They were going to take one on the road. Then Harden goes down and it was going to be the Bucks. They didn't do it. Game 2, Harden remains out. All right, we'll go back to Milwaukee with a split. It's the Bucks game. They get mopped. Game 3, it's the Bucks game. They got to get one at home. I don't know. Give me the Nets money line, plus 140, whatever it is. No Harden, any other team, those old Houston Rockets teams, dead in the water. This time, it just puts the ball in Kevin Durant's hands, who is even better than James Harden. And when it's not in Durant's hands, it's in Kyrie's hands, who's a top 15 player in the NBA. No other team can do that. I still think the Nets get this done. They're defending better, and Durant can score on anyone.
Nick, you want to chase or fade that Milwaukee wins and covers?
Man, I really don't feel good about this, but I have learned that if a number doesn't look like it makes a ton of sense to me on the surface, there's usually a reason for that. Based on how the series has gone in games 1 and 2, you would think that this line should be flipped, but I'm going to take a leap of faith here and go with Milwaukee. Like Julian said, I think if they win a game in this series, it's going to be this one. If they go down 3-0, this is not a super resilient bunch. This is not a team that's handled pressure very well. And that's part of the reason that I'm nervous about this pick, because Milwaukee has been up 2-0 in a series a couple of years ago and completely blew it. They've been on the other side of this. And even in that scenario, they weren't able to hang on. So very little about this team has kind of foretold that they're the type of team that can climb back into a series against an opponent that maybe has more top end talent like Brooklyn. Julian mentioned the role players for Milwaukee. You'd like to think you probably get a better effort at home, but to me, it's the stars that have been the issue. If you're depending on Pat Connaughton or Bryn Forbes or PJ Tucker to knock down a bunch of threes to beat the Nets, I think you're in trouble if that's the game plan. They need a better effort from Chris Middleton. They need a better effort from Giannis. They need a better effort from Jrue Holiday. I mean, Middleton can't start the game 0 of 8 from the field on some pretty good looks. And the biggest thing to me is that the Nets cannot get away with Blake Griffin guarding Giannis Antetokounmpo for 20 plus minutes in a second round playoff game. I mean, that's what happened in game 2 is you have Blake Griffin playing 7-8 feet off Giannis, and the Bucks offense, they didn't know what to do. They tried to play it as they had all year and let Giannis be the primary initiator. That results in him just getting a runway and plowing his way in and essentially hoping that the defender guesses wrong and he's able to, finish with a Euro step. More often than not, that's not what happened. I thought the Nets played Giannis really smartly. And, right now, as I alluded to in the last answer, I don't know what the adjustment is for Milwaukee. You don't have some sharpshooter you can throw out there and make, Brooklyn scramble on defense. I think you have to find something internally. But playing at home, playing in front of a capacity crowd for the first time in 15 months at Fiserv Forum, that should help. I'm putting blind faith in the Milwaukee Bucks tonight.
Two quick things.
Go ahead, Jules.
2 quick things I want to add to that. Number 1, I do want to see who the officials are for this game. The Bucks might get a little help.
Very true.
That's just the way it is. Number 2, whoever wins this game, I may or may not bet this game. Whoever wins this game, I will bet the Nets game 4, because that is either going to be 2-1 Nets, and they're not going to want to go back to Brooklyn 2-2 with Harden's health kind of up in the air. They would love to not have to play him in this series. Or this gets to 3-0, and the Bucks are going to lay down in that game 4, and the Nets are going to finish this off. So tonight's a coin flip. Like Nick's right. There's a lot of reasons to like the Bucks. No matter what happens tonight, give me the Nets in game 4.
Well, Jules, how do you then feel about the Clippers plus 130 underdogs? Do you want to chase or fade that they pull off the upset for us, please?
I will chase that. This one I've bet. I'm on the Clippers money line. I think this goes back to LA 1-1. We've seen the Clippers have no issues on the road in this postseason. Obviously, Utah, that second half got a little wild, but they knocked down a million threes. I think there's a lot of adjustments that the Clippers can make to get this win. Tyronn Lue letting Luke Kennard just get abused time after time in that pick and roll with Donovan Mitchell. That needs to change. But they took Mitchell's best shot and lost that game by 3, getting a meh game from Kawhi Leonard. He tried to keep him in it, but he wasn't special. And Paul George and Marcus Morris shot a combined 8 for 31 in that game. More shots are going to go in. Adjustments will be made. I think that the Clippers find a way to get this one done and keep this series close.
Nick, how much faith do you have in the Clippers here as plus 130 underdogs?
A pretty decent amount of faith, especially if there's no Mike Conley. I thought the Clippers were the better team in that game for most of game one. The Jazz really started pouring it on in the third with all those threes. And this was still a close game, throughout the fourth quarter. I thought the one issue, and this is something that we've seen from the Clippers throughout the year, is in crunch time, they didn't know what to do. They had a chance to win this game late in the fourth quarter. And I believe the game ended with Marcus Morris getting blocked in the corner by Rudy Gobert on a shot that he probably never should have been taking. Kawhi Leonard deferred, Paul George deferred, and all of a sudden you're forcing up a bad shot. And that's something that's plagued the Clippers throughout the year. So they're a team that needs to be up, multiple possessions going into the final minute. I don't trust them if this is like a 110 game with a minute left. Then give me the Jazz, give me Donovan Mitchell, who was awesome in game one. But game one felt like it was the Clippers to win for like 35 of the 48 minutes. And they just kind of took their foot off the gas at the wrong time. So especially if there's no Conley, I do like a Kawhi Leonard to rebound. We virtually have to get a better game from Paul George, who was terrible in game one. So I think we head back to LA with this series tied up.
Slate approved time, guys. Favorite bet or DFS play tonight? Nick, go ahead.
I believe Julian mentioned him earlier, but Bruce Brown at 4,200. I think he's going to be really popular. But there's a reason for that. 20 plus DK points in 4 straight games. He's top 25 DK points in 3 of those games. And then on the sportsbook side, if I'm going to ride with the Bucks, Chris Middleton's going to be the reason that they win this game. So there's a player parlay that you could do on the DK sportsbook. Chris Middleton to score at least 23 points plus the Bucks win the game. You can get that at plus 170.
Jules?
We already covered it. Clippers money line plus 130. Get the hammers out.